What is up, guys? It's Bo here again, and welcome to another Bo Jinjin vlog. In this entry, I wanted to go back to something that I was talking about in the entries kind of like preceding the last few, where I talk about and consciousness and the kind of, that being the symbol or the articulation of the new conscious paradigm that we are moving into, right? Or rather, that many of us might resonate with going into the future, right? And the thing that I wanted to add to that, because really, like, I've essentially talked about that enough in those two entries, but like, I just wanted to give a simple kind of statement that kind of captures the essence of and consciousness and the significance of that, right? And that statement is, the new paradigm includes the old, right? I've already said this, in the entries where I discuss the unconsciousness paradigm, right? But this statement essentially captures the essence of and consciousness, right? This is how we move away from the old paradigm or all consciousness to the new paradigm and consciousness, right? It is the new paradigm includes the old paradigm, right? The fact that we might be moving towards a new paradigm does not mean that the old paradigm is wrong, right? And I give this statement because it's a catch-all statement that basically, like, it applies to any kind of shift in paradigm, any paradigm shift that you might be going through in life, and overall, it applies to like the shift in consciousness, right? Like, again, the shift in consciousness towards and consciousness, right? And so and consciousness is the way forwards, and has been as such for probably millennia. Like, I'm only able to talk about this paradigm shift, this new consciousness paradigm, because there have been so many before me, spiritual leaders, other thought leaders such as that, who have paved the way to allow this kind of consciousness to proliferate throughout the ages, right? Like people like Jesus and Buddha knew about this kind of consciousness. That was what they were trying to teach to people, right? But it just so happened that, like, at the time of their lives, like, like civilization wasn't quite ready, right? And it could be argued that, like, it's not quite ready now. Honestly, if I was to give my honest opinion, like, I feel that most of society is not ready for such a consciousness shift, right? And who knows whether or not the human species will ever get to a point where they will be ready for such a consciousness shift, right? But the good sign is that more and more people are undergoing it, like than the past, right? Because of things like the internet and just the way that our lives is designed, like, because there's so much contrast in today's world, it forces a lot of people to kind of like awaken to this kind of a mindset, right? And so the new paradigm includes the old, right? What does this mean, right? Why is this statement so catch-all? It's because the thing about and consciousness, like, is that it includes all consciousness. Like, whatever it is that you're moving into, right? Don't treat the old thing as if it's something that you then throw away. No, keep it. And if it arises, you then have acceptance for it, right? Because the problem that we've run into for many many generations of human beings is that like we go back and forth between these different paradigms, or these different kind of like modalities, you know, and we never kind of transcend them, because like we're always going back and forth in this all consciousness kind of a way, you know, where you know, it's like you know, this is true, therefore this is no longer true. And then when this comes back into existence, we're like, oh, okay, well, you know, we like, this is all that exists. Like we can't include that, like the new thing, because this is here, right? It's like, okay, it's like love and fear, right? You know, many, like we all know that love is where we're trying to get to, but we're currently, you know, in the clutches of fear right now. You know, it could be argued, you know, many of us find ourselves in a fearful paradigm because society is changing so quickly, you know, and like life is becoming so unpredictable and uncertain that like many of us like, what the fuck is going to happen to me, right? You know, I feel that, you know, a lot of times. And like, because we're in such a fearful paradigm, like we think there's no place for love. It's really weird. It's, when you think about it, it kind of rings true, right? It's like when you're in such a fearful paradigm, you're like, you almost think like love is kind of like, it's not supposed to be there. You know, how funny is that? Like, you know, we recognize that, yeah, you know, you ask anyone, is love not the ultimate goal? And like, even if they're even if they're mired in like the blackest of fear and like darkness, they're like, yeah, well, maybe some people might say no, but like for the average person, like even if they're like mired in like, you know, scarcity and like fear and stuff like that, if you ask them like, is love your ultimate purpose in life, they'll be like, yeah, you know, yeah, I guess so, you know, that's what I'm moving towards, that's what I want, right? But then like, but like, you know, but then like if you give them love, or if you like show them that love is possible right now, they reject it, because it's like, no, because love isn't here. Love is the ultimate goal, but it's not here, right? That's all consciousness, right? Or rather, you know, like when they finally reach love, it's like, oh my god, love, and then like someone says something like, you're a cunt. You know, just using that example, like, because you never know, you know. This is why, I guess this is why people focus more on pain than love, because like it's more kind of in your face when like pain suddenly starts charging into your life, you know. But like, you know, yeah, you're in a loving state, you know, like your typical like new agey kind of hippie, and you're like, oh, life is love, I love everyone, love is the ultimate answer. And someone comes up to you and says, guess what, you're a cunt. And you're like, ah, and well, you're not like that, but like, you're like, you have not seen the way, and you try and resist it, right? You know, like this guy is like being like a complete nutcase to you, and you are resisting it, right? You're resisting it. Because you think that love and pain cannot exist simultaneously, right? And this is all consciousness. It is the kind of consciousness where if one thing is true, the other one can't be true, right? And now I appreciate that this is quite a deep, or you could say high, concept, right? Because this statement that I gave you is quite abstract, right? Because it's merely a principle. It's not something that is grounded in like practicality. You know, it's not do this to fix your car. It's this is the way that you think, and this is the new way to think, right? It encompasses, it's like a frame. It's like a frame that encompasses many different things, right? You know, so I gave you that example, and I want you to think about it, right? I want you to think about it. I want you to think about how you view existence. If you're a spiritual person, how do you view existence? What are your most resonant principles or truths, right? And then I want you to go a step higher, right? The key to this is you must go a level higher, right? You must think of those two seemingly like absolute things, such as love and hate. What more is there than love and hate? Well, there is the reaction to love and hate, or love and fear, right? It is the way that they then interact. That is the higher thing, right? There is love and fear, yes, but then we can go to a level higher, which is how do we marry them, right? And there you will find whether you are in and consciousness or all consciousness, right? This is where you will find whether you are actually in a mindset of oneness or duality, right? That's just those are other words I can use for this, right? But energetically, again, Teal Swan articulates this really well, it's the energy of expansion and freedom, right? It's a feeling thing, right? What I just gave you is the theory, is the concept, right? The new paradigm includes the old, right? But really what it is a feeling, right? Why do we embrace and consciousness? What is the fucking point of it, right? The point is we do it so that we feel energetically free. That's why we do it. Versus the typical thing, which is like we feel trapped. We feel like we can't go anywhere. We feel like, it's like this constant like tug of war, like, oh, now I'm in hate, man, like love isn't here anymore. And you feel that tugging, and you get tugged to love, and it's like, oh, I'm loving, but then what if hate comes back and you're being tugged in that direction? You're tied either way, right? Your hands are tied either way. But like, what you do, you follow the feeling that frees you, which is to release resistance. I explained that like it is releasing secondary resistance, which is like basically like releasing that kind of like subtle voice that tells you that like one can't exist without the other, that it is wrong when you're loving to then be hateful, or that when you are hateful you can't be loving, right? Here's an example that came to me, like how many times have you been with people who are like suffering something, like they're like bereft, they're in bereavement, right, or something like that, right? And you feel the responsibility, the crushing responsibility to be sad with them, because when there is hate there can't be love, right? How does that make you feel, right? How does it make the other people feel? What if it could be, what if the person who died was like, I don't want you to be like that. If I die, be sad, but don't think that you have to be sad forever. Be sad, but then move on. What if he said that? How different would it be, right? How much freer would you feel if, like, you didn't have to be one way or the other? You could be however the fuck you want, right? This is why we embrace and consciousness. It's for energetic freedom. It's not for any, like, philosophical or, like, intellectual, like, kind of, like, virtue. No. Who gives a fuck about that shit? No. It's interesting. Like, it's interesting. It's, what I explained is interesting, but, like, at the same time, like, why do we do it? We do it because we want to free ourselves. There is love and fear in this world. There is not one without the other. There is contrast, And so, no matter how painful, no matter how scary or unstable, seemingly, we must, I don't want to say we must, but like, we always have the option to choose the thing that is very unusual, almost a bit weird, socially unacceptable, but it frees us. That's why, right? I'll leave you with that, right? Because I don't want to say any more about this, really. I think that's enough. So cool. That is why. Hope that was insightful. This is where we're moving. This is where I'm moving. This is where you could move if you wanted, right? Cool. Thank you. And I'll see you in the next entry. Bye-bye.